Hello, welcome to Kim and Friends, where we laugh through the chaos, cry whenever the hell we feel like it, and always keep it real. Because as women, the conversations we have and the stories we share behind closed doors need to be heard out in the wild. I'm Kim, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen today. I really hope something resonates with you. Welcome to Kim and Friends. I appreciate you being here today, for listening. I am very excited to have Michelle in the studio with me today. I do have to say, she is one of those people, y'all. It was instant connection. I mean, it's definitely been a friendship more of quality, not quantity. As I'm coming to find, a lot of the people I've brought on here have been. It's people that you feel like you've spent a lifetime with when you probably collectively have only had like a few hours in the same room together. But we are, in the most St. Louis way possible, have like a bazillion people in common. And if you're from St. Louis, then you know what I'm talking about. Mama. Michelle has a mom. She also is a mom. Mama to Petey, Lillian, and Mateo. She's a doggy mom to Sparky and wife to Fabrizio. Michelle is the preschool secretary at St. Francis of Assisi in South County, St. Louis. But her background is actually in mortgage and real estate. She stayed at home with her kids until her youngest, Mateo, started preschool. She then became a certified sub and took a position as a teaching aide. And then she exclusively subbed for a year, and then they offered her the position as the preschool secretary, and she has held that position at St. Francis of Assisi for the past 5 years. She is also a loud and proud breast cancer survivor, and that's what we're going to spend the bulk of our time discussing today. If you listened to my previous mini-sode about my sort of journey with getting to that point in my life where I needed to have scans, and then you know that it's something I think about a lot. So Michelle actually reached out to me on Facebook after that mini-sode, and I thought, what better fit than to have her on to discuss her journey. But of course, as always, her most important credential for the purposes of today's episode is that she is just an incredible woman who I have the fortunate privilege to call my friend. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Kim. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited you're here. I need you to help me out because middle-aged memory, I feel like I met you even before Daniel and I were together, but I don't know where all that lines out and where all of our crazy, like, incestual St. Louis lines lie. I know you through Daniel. I know you through Susie. But am I making this up, or do you not remember either?
It's kind of blurry, thanks to, yes, perimenopause and children and all the things that take our brain cells away for a bit. I do know, at first I thought it was through Daniel. So I went to grade school with Daniel. He was a year ahead of me. Kind of ran in the same crowd. Susie, who you mentioned, is my cousin. My mom and her dad are siblings. I feel like I maybe met you before you and Daniel were so much exclusive. I remember it being in a backyard somewhere for a party. And I don't know that you guys were completely together, but kind of were, if that makes sense.
I believe you, Michelle.
Yeah. It's foggy, but nevertheless, we met, and I thought you were hilarious and so pretty. And Daniel has just always been super funny. So I love whenever I'm in the company of both of you. So yeah.
Okay, well, thank you a million times. Thank you, because pretty is my second favorite compliment to funny. Nothing is better than being told that you are funny. And I really appreciate that, because sometimes you think Daniel and I are both funny. I think Daniel's funny. I think I'm funny. Daniel does not always think that I am funny. And I'm like, no, babe, you have a funny wife. Okay. So
He
I'll
just,
just have to call you next time
yeah,
he needs a reminder.
absolutely.
Okay. I want to spend a good amount of time talking about your journey through your breast cancer diagnosis, your treatment, your recovery. But I could not have you on today without at least noting the fact that you were a kidney donor.
I was.
So, and we did mention that you and Susie are cousins.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Your mother and her father, Doug, are brother and sisters. And Doug is who you donated the kidney to, correct?
He is. Yeah. Yeah.
And how old were you when you did that?
I was 24, so started the process a little bit before I turned 24, but the actual surgery took place when I was 24.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a major choice at any point in your life. Can you walk me through sort of how that came about or what that decision process was like for you?
Yeah. So I grew up with a dad who had type 1 diabetes late onset. He found out 2 weeks before he turned 21. My dad, Pete, was not a sibling to Doug. They knew each other forever. But I grew up with a dad who was managing that, and he was on dialysis for quite a while. He was I think one of the very first few people that received a kidney and pancreas transplant in the Midwest. Um, so he had a transplant in 93 when I was in fourth grade. It unfortunately failed pretty quickly. And he then was put on dialysis, which was really hard, especially back then because there wasn't as many dialysis clinics, I think, as there are now. So like traveling as a child, that never took place. We were always kind of homebound. And it was just hard to watch him. One of my favorite movies, which is also one of the saddest movies, is Steel Magnolias.
Oh, God.
And yeah, yeah. So I remember the first time seeing that. I guess I was maybe teenager. They talk about Shelby. Her arms, they said, well, it looks like you're driving nails up your arms. And I just remember that, oh my gosh, that's what I used to think about my dad. Like his body was drug through the mud. He just, it was hard. It was very hard, but it was also somewhat normal because that's all I knew. My dad got pretty sick when I was in kindergarten, even though he was diagnosed well before I was born. So it was hard to watch. And he passed away when I was 12, unfortunately. So my Uncle Doug was one of the many men who stepped in to be a father figure to me. And he was amazing. Unfortunately, my Uncle Doug has passed. If you haven't caught Susie's episode, he just was incredible. And he was sick. He had type 2 diabetes, and he then was dependent on dialysis. And I remember seeing him at my cousin Jeffrey's wedding, and he didn't look great. And we knew that he needed a kidney. And I hemmed and hawed over it for a little bit. And I went to Fabrizio, who we've been together since high school. And I said, what do you think about me donating my kidney to my Uncle Doug? And at the time, we weren't married. We knew that we were one day going to be married, and we definitely wanted children. And he said, oh, I don't know. Whatever you think, I'm along for the ride. And that's just very Fabrizio. He's always along for the ride with my ideas. And I said, the only hindrance I would have is if they told me I wouldn't be able to have children. And he's like, well, check it out, see what it's about. And at the time, they had shared the information for all of us to get tested to see if we were even a match.
Right.
And I called the number. We all went and got tested together. My brother, my sister. I don't remember I know my mom did, but at the time, my mom had just had a baby and she had gestational diabetes. Later on, she has since been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. So it would have been difficult for her to donate. But I went, got tested, found out that I was a match. And I called them and said, I want to pursue this. What do I need to do? And it involved lots of blood being drawn and several appointments with a social worker to make sure that this was something I truly wanted to do. And it was. And I asked if I do this, would I be able to have children? And they said, oh, absolutely. This doesn't affect it at all. Like there's many people that have been born with one kidney and had no idea. And, you know, it's the human body is wild. But yeah, so at that moment, I was like, let's do it. And then I wanted to keep it a secret because my Uncle Doug, I knew, would be like, absolutely not. You're not
Right.
doing this. You're young. I'm not putting, you know, he would never want to see anybody go through any sort of pain, especially a loved one. So we had gotten pretty far into the testing and all the things were kind of happening. And I don't remember. I think maybe they told my Uncle Doug that there was somebody they had a donor, essentially. But he didn't know right away, I think, that it was me. And then they called me and they said, it really would be best if you let him know before. And so I sat on that for a day. And then I called my Uncle Doug and was just kind of small talking with him. And I said, by the way, I'm going to give you my kidney. And he was like, what? Absolutely not. And I said, well, listen, if I'm not giving it to you, I'm giving it to somebody else because I've already gone through this process.
Right.
So,
Right.
you know, and I think the thing that really got him was, you know, I told him my dad wasn't going to be able to walk me down the aisle. And, you know, I wanted him to have that time to do that and those things. Like it weighed heavy on me. Like not only did I want to do it for my Uncle Doug, but I wanted to do it for my cousin Matt and Susie because I knew how crummy it was to lose my dad. Sorry. A little emotional
No,
there.
I mean, girl, we have just like gone there.
We're like not even 10 minutes in. Here I go.
I know. I know.
But yeah, so he finally caved and accepted. And yeah, November of 2007, I went in with two kidneys and came out with one. And,
Mhm.
you know, it has not affected my life at all. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. You know, recovery was kind of 0 stars on Yelp. You know, you go in completely healthy and you come out. And, you know, the incisions weren't bad. They actually took it through my belly button. Like they did it laparoscopically. So no real huge scars. I remember asking him, like, are you guys gonna, because my dad's scars were pretty intense. Again, he had a kidney and pancreas, a little bit different, but just
And
from
like 10, what, like 10, 12 years previous too.
right.
Yeah.
93 to 2007. So it's wild how much like the change was with that. But yeah, no, if anybody is ever thinking about it, like what better thing can you do with, like, what better gift can you give? And I think, you know, it gave my uncle several years longer to enjoy his family.
Mhm.
And I wish it could have given him, you know, even longer and that he was here to bust my chops and me to aggravate him. But I have no doubt that both him and my dad and everyone, they they see us. They're with us. So yeah.
Well, and I met, Daniel and I got together in late 2010. And then that's when I sort of like got interwoven into his whole network of people. And, I got to meet Doug. I got to be, at him and Sue's house and in the
Yeah.
pool and seeing him just being his like big, larger than life, entertaining, loving the kids. I mean, and
Oh
that's,
yeah.
I mean, certainly, I'm sure Sue and Matt and Susie will always cherish that extra time that they got. But on a selfish level, I'm like, I'm so glad I got to,
Mm-hmm.
get to know my dear, dear, dear friend's dad.
He was a
Wow.
character.
Yeah, he really was.
And it was funny because he would give me so much trouble. He would pick me up a lot from high school and take me home before I could drive, and we'd have conversations. He talked me out of getting a Jeep Wrangler. That was my dream vehicle. And he's like, absolutely. He was a firefighter. He's like, absolutely not. Never going to happen. But I gave him that gift. And then he gave me the special gift of walking me down the aisle when I got married to Fabrizio, which was amazing. But yeah, he was amazing. And we
He's a good one.
definitely, yeah, yeah.
Well, cool. Thank you for sharing that. And just going right in with the emotions.
Right?
Ooh, okay. Okay. Well, if you have not listened to Susie's episode, it was the second episode of this season. You should definitely go back and listen to that. It was, everything that Doug went through played a huge role in, sort of where Susie is today and the person she is. And that was a really, you know, touching story that she told as well. So definitely hop back and listen to that one, guys, if you haven't. Let's move on to, the light topic.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry to make a joke out of it, but I'm like, okay, it's not getting light, y'all. We're gonna stay here. We're gonna stay. I mean, happy ending, of course, but like, yeah, we're gonna stay in this sort of like emotional place today. You were diagnosed with breast cancer in 2019. So let's just start with from the very beginning. What clued you in to be concerned?
First off, do not like apologize. Dark humor is that is my dig there. So,
Okay.
you are in good company. So yeah, I was diagnosed May 15th of 2019. I was nursing my youngest, Mateo, and I had nursed all three of my children. Um, and I found a lump, and I had never really had lumps or bumps in my breast that I had ever felt before. So it's crazy because I think losing a dad early on, I had always had this health anxiety and like fear of dying. And I wasn't scared about this. I didn't, in my mind, I'm like, it's not breast cancer because I've nursed my babies and I'm 35 years old. So that, and I have no family history. My dad is one of 11. He has 7 sisters. I have lots of female cousins. No one on my mom's side, no one on my dad's side has had this. So,
Well, I just want to like note though, like that makes sense though, that you would have this, you were, sort of, I don't know, cursed in a way with this like awareness of death.
Yeah.
At a young age, so that
Yeah.
makes sense. Like you were just carrying a wiser than your years experience, that sort of would naturally make you be more aware of it for sure.
Yeah. And it was ironically dark humor stepping in. I had started seeing a counselor about a year before I was diagnosed because I had really bad postpartum anxiety. I think I've always had anxiety, just that stems a lot from my dad passing. And we were really diving into that and my fear of dying. And I just remember, I don't mean to laugh. And
Hey, this is your story, girl. You can laugh at whatever you want.
I just remember going to my counselor the week after I was diagnosed, and she knew that I was like investigating what was going on, but telling her that I was diagnosed. And the exact words out of her mouth, which I love, was, "Holy shit." Um, because I've had this big fear of, oh God, something horrible, this impending doom of, my dad passed away when he was 38 and I'm 35 and
You were 35, yeah.
yeah, and there's just this premonition of I'm not going to make it to 38 because my dad didn't make it to 38. So I don't know why in my head I had that. I mean, yes, him passing, but it was very, very like wild that that's what I was already trying to get help with. And then I have something that possibly could take me out. And unfortunately has taken out way too many women, especially in this day and age. So, yeah, just, irony is not lost.
Right.
But yeah, I was diagnosed, basically found the lump while nursing, called my OBGYN because I figured that's who you go to. I had never had a mammogram. Again, no family history. You
hear. Yeah, you were 35. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you hear all these things that, women get breast cancer who have a family history. And I think it's like 2% of women get diagnosed with breast cancer while actively breastfeeding, which is what I was doing at that time. So again, not nervous about it. I almost didn't call my OBGYN. I found it and I remember telling Fabrizio about it. And he's like, well, maybe, it's nothing, but I don't know. He's a guy, he doesn't have any idea. So the next week was Easter, and I'm talking to my mom and my sister, and I say, oh, I found this. And immediately they're like, let me feel it. So I'm getting felt up at Easter, that, and,
Naturally.
right. Who does it? No, but my mom was like, you need to just call and get it checked out. It's probably nothing, but just have it checked out. It's probably some sort of cyst or something because you're breastfeeding. So I call my OBGYN and I tell them, and they schedule me an appointment pretty quickly. And I remember saying to them, if this thing just goes away, should I just call and cancel the appointment? And they're like, yeah, but definitely we need to see you. So I went in for my appointment, and I can remember my OBGYN delivered all three of my babies, and he's a wonderful man, but our
Yes,
banter,
Dr. Jostis.
yeah.
He was my OB with Edna.
Oh, I love Dr.
He
Joseph.
did not deliver her. He didn't deliver her. She came almost 3 weeks early. He
Okay, yeah.
wasn't on call and he was out of town and somebody else delivered her. But yeah, he was my OB for years he was my OB and then he delivered
Yeah.
Edna. Yeah.
I love Dr. Jostis. Saved my life. But our banter, because of my anxiety, he always just kind of like, okay, Michelle, you're going to be fine. I'll tell you when you're not going to be fine, type of thing, whenever I was going through my pregnancies. And his demeanor was a little different at this appointment. So, he comes in, he is giving me an exam, and I can tell that he's kind of tracking. I'm fair skinned, so you can kind of see my veins. And I can tell that he's almost trying to figure out where this is in correlation to veins. I don't know. Maybe I'm just coming up with this, but he seemed not his general kind of humor back and forth self with me. So he says, I'm going to schedule you for a mammogram with an immediate ultrasound afterwards. And so we schedule that. I go for the mammogram. The mammogram tells us that I have dense breast tissue, which you've talked about in your previous episode. And the crazy thing is you could feel my lump, but you couldn't see it on the mammogram. So
who doesn't have dense breast tissue?
you
Now
know,
that we're all of our peers, I feel like every single one of my peers is like, yeah, they said I had dense breast tissue. It's crazy how common it is. And that it is such a hindrance to accurate results in a mammogram. And my GP, who was actually on a couple weeks ago, has told me they're trying to make the shift towards ultrasounds as the rule of thumb.
standard of care.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get you back on track. So they could feel it, couldn't see it in the mammogram. So then you go to the ultrasound, I guess.
I go to the ultrasound, and the way they described dense breast tissue was that it was like a tree that has lots of foliage, and they're looking for a bird's nest.
Gotcha.
And it's really hard to see. So I go for the ultrasound. I can tell the ultrasound technician is looks a little concerned. She goes and steps out to get the doctor, and I look, and Fabrizio's in the waiting room. He does not come back with me. I don't know if that was he asked and they said no. So I didn't see any men back there anytime that I was there, which was a little scary because I'm by myself. And before, like I said, I wasn't really thinking it was anything, but now I'm very good at reading people's emotions. And I'm starting to worry. So she steps out. I look at the screen because she's got it on freeze frame, and I can see what looks like fire coming out of, I guess, the tumor. And I'm texting Fabrizio, I don't know what's happening. She's getting a doctor. She was very, very nice. They come in, they start combing on my armpit next to the breast that the tumor was in. And I had no idea why. It wasn't hitting me in that moment. And they say, we need to do a biopsy. We're going to have you come back in a couple of days, go schedule it out front. And I was completely shook. I'm like, okay, I wasn't worried, but now I'm worried.
Right.
And the ultrasound technician is like, well, there's a good chance it could be some adenoma, something or another. So of course, I run to Google and I'm like, yeah, that's what it is. Okay, it's going to be that. So I go for the biopsy, and they were very concerned about hitting, I guess, a milk duct, getting a milk fistula. So that was more of their concern. They wanted me to pump before I went in. I go in, they go to do the biopsy, and I guess they hit a blood vessel. So then they're holding pressure down on my chest for 20 minutes. God love them, trying to get the bleeding to stop. That was the most painful part of it. It was an experience. And then they wrap you up tight, they send you home, and they say, we'll have results in 3 days. Like, great. Go home. Next 3 days go by. I know they're going to call me on this Thursday afternoon, morning, sometime. And I had already signed up to go to a volunteer luncheon type thing at my son's elementary school. He was in kindergarten, my oldest. And
How old are all your kids at this
so
point?
Petey was 6, Lillian was 3, and Mateo was 1.
Okay.
So Petey's in kindergarten. I'm getting ready to go up to this luncheon or volunteer thing up at his school. And I get the phone call about 20 minutes before I'm supposed to leave.
Oh,
And it
Jesus.
just so happened that Fabrizio was home. Usually he wouldn't be, but he was because he was going to watch Lillian and Mateo, or else I would have been alone with Lillian and Mateo. And it's the nurse from the breast center. And she sounds happy enough when I answer the phone. I'm like, she's just going to tell me it's nothing. They put, when they did the biopsy, they put like a magnetic tracer in there. So if it's something they're watching, they can just keep an eye on it and that can identify it. So when I answer the phone, I'm thinking she's going to tell me it's nothing. Have a great day. And she says, are you alone? And I said, well, no, my husband's here and my kids. And she's like, okay. She's like, we got the results of your biopsy, and I'm sorry to say it's breast cancer. And I just remember thinking like, wait, what? No, she's got the wrong file. You've made a mistake, dear. And at that moment, she said, if you could put your phone on speaker, I've got a lot of information to give you. I need you to get a pen and paper, and it would be great if your husband could be in the room with you too, so he can help hear some of the things I'm going to tell you. And it just, from there, was a whirlwind. At the time, we didn't know what kind of breast cancer it was, which I didn't even know there were different kinds of breast cancer. But she told me that they were making appointments with an oncologist. My first appointment was with a breast surgeon. And then from there, it was an oncologist and a radiation oncologist. So when they took the biopsy, they sent it off. It told them that it was breast cancer, but they didn't know just yet what kind of breast cancer it was. They were still waiting for the pathology. So that was on a Thursday. The following Monday, I had an appointment with a breast surgeon. And when I walked in, they told me that I had what was called triple negative breast cancer, which unfortunately is the most aggressive form and tends to be diagnosed among younger women, Hispanic women, and Black women. And they said, no matter what, you're going to need chemo. There's no way around it. So at that point, they told me they were scheduling an appointment with the oncologist and then a radiation oncologist. And it just went off from there.
Wow. And then, like, how quickly did the chemo start then? Did you have the surgery first or what?
No, I actually, so when they found out it was triple negative, and I believe this is the standard of care now, I'm not sure if it is. If it isn't, it needs to be, in my personal opinion. But with triple negative, there's about 6 subtypes, I believe. And some are very resistant to chemo, and some tend to they're highly sensitive to chemo. So what was told to me was, if we take the tumor out, at the time they weren't, I think I was right before they started doing all these onc scores and all these things like that, which can tell you, what's your level of it metastasizing or returning or anything like that. They weren't offering that to me at that time. I think it was still very new. So the way they explained it was, if we do surgery first, we have no way of knowing if your tumor was resistant or sensitive to the chemo. So they said, we're going to do chemo first. We're going to do 16 infusions. And then depending on if I wanted to choose a double mastectomy or a lumpectomy, with a lumpectomy, you will always have radiation with that. Mastectomy, it's not necessary unless it's gone to your lymph nodes. So they were like, you have time to weigh that decision while you're going through the chemo. And they were going to be tracking by physical exam if my tumor was responding. So in that moment, I'm like, oh my God, get it out of me. Are you crazy? Like, it's just going to be in there moving all about my body. What? And then I had a come to Jesus moment. I need to keep this thing in here, because what if they take it out and the chemo didn't work against my type of tumor? So I did chemo first and then had my surgery. And then I ended up needing radiation.
Okay. And you did do the double mastectomy.
I did. So in my mind, it wasn't an easy decision, but in my mind, it was, they nursed 3 babies and they did their job, and it wasn't something that I wanted to, nobody wants to go about having, any sort of breast augmentation with that, you know what I mean? Being your reason to have it, which, a lot of breast cancer survivors, they'll be like, when people say, oh, well, you're getting a free boob job. You get.
I did not consent.
Yeah.
I did not consent.
The ones I had before tried to kill me. So
yeah.
Yeah. So in my mind, it was take them, because once I was diagnosed, I started getting into these Facebook breast cancer groups. And I spent a little time in there, got a little bit of knowledge, and then I got out of there because it was emotionally too much for me. But I'm forever grateful for all the information and stories that I heard in these groups, because it opened my eyes. It's like learning a foreign language crash course. You're learning about, lymphocytes and all these terms. And I'm like, what does it mean? And they would help me kind of go over my pathology report. Like, does this look good? Does this look bad? Like, things that I was almost scared to bring to my doctor, because I didn't want to hear from him what was going to be the case. I thought, I want to hear from the people that are in it. What is their take on it? So it was, one of those things where women were telling stories of having a single mastectomy and then coming back a year later because it was then in their other breast. Or there were stories of women that were told it was only in one breast, and then they were going to do a double mastectomy anyway. And then they end up finding at surgery, it was also in the other breast. So I'm like, I want them both gone. Let's be done with it. And it's not an easy decision by no means, but.
No, none of this is easy, Michelle. Yeah. I just want to commend you, because I think that, like, what you're saying, like several things that you've said in the past few minutes, like, for one, like, doctors have a standard of care, and there's procedures and protocols for a reason, and they do have to, like, dot their I's and cross their T's, and they can't let, if they're doing their job properly, they can't let their emotions get wrapped up in all of this and be holding your hand and telling you, well, my aunt did this and this is what happened. But then you did go find that community and those people that could give you that perspective. But then in the heat of all of this, in the midst of all of this, you also had, like, the peace of mind to say, like, okay, but I know when I need to, like, hold a boundary or remove myself from the groups, because you knew there would be this tipping point of, like, okay, this information is useful and helpful, and it's going to assist me. And then there's also a place where I could go off the deep end and really like get consumed and let it take over my entire identity and my entire, I mean, and no disrespect to anyone until you've been in it and you're trying to deal with it, what you'll do as a coping mechanism. And you're going to find healthy and unhealthy outlets just like any healthy person does. Like that.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like that the fact that when you were like in the midst of all of this, that you were able to like keep your wherewithal to know like, okay, I'm going to take what I can and I'm going to give what I can when it comes to these Facebook groups, but I'm going to also know when enough is enough. So that's awesome that you were able to do that.
Yeah, no, it's sad because you're in these groups and you're seeing women at 21 and 25 getting diagnosed. And I'm like, what is happening? And, the thing is when I was diagnosed and I was like, I need all the knowledge I can get, I immediately turned to Facebook because when I was home with my babies, Facebook was my outlet to the world to have those connections with other adults because my husband worked a lot and I was in the trenches with my kids. So I was on Facebook actively and lots of people on my page would acknowledge it. I was posting maybe several times a day, funny videos about my kids or things like that. So Facebook was immediately okay, I'm going there to see what I can find out. And
well, I was there before and after your diagnosis because Edna is just a year ahead of Petey. We were like me, you, Teresa, Kristen Franceschi, Liz Lupo,
Lori,
like we all have these kids that are all just within like 6 months to a year of each other. Yeah. And I wasn't even like super close with Lori and Liz until like later. But yeah, Facebook was our jam, man. Like,
yeah.
And we were just like at home with like a baby on our boob. I mean, and you were your kids are like a couple years apart and like you would like get like a brief stint of a break and then right back to another one on it. Like, yeah. Yeah, we were on Facebook. It was our social life. Yeah.
It was. Yeah. That's how, it was when I needed comic relief or when I, had a conversation starter of people, post something and then people are talking with you in the threads and you're like, okay, because Fabrizio's at work cutting concrete. He can't get on the phone with a big saw running in the background and, talk to me about all the things. Didn't mean I wasn't texting him all the time. But yeah, so it was just, that's where I went because that's what was familiar to me. And I knew that I could get the information I needed. And I got so much information, probably too much, but I also met some really incredible women along the way. A good majority of them I've never met in person. Mm-hmm. I ended up leaving a lot of the triple negative groups because it was, where do you go when you're going through something so horrible and you just want, like you said, you want reassurance. And that's the thing I wanted throughout the whole time I was going through it. I wanted that reassurance. I wanted somebody to tell me you're going to be okay. Yeah. And I remember thinking when I was diagnosed, oh, it's breast cancer. That's easy. I'll have some chemo, have a surgery, and then I'll be fine. It did not even come across my mind in that moment that this could come back. This could come back and go to an organ that, my liver, my lungs, my brain, it could wipe me out. And I don't know what in my head at that moment thought, it's breast cancer. That's an easy one. That's the one so many people know about. There's no easy cancer. None of them are easy. But because there's so much awareness about breast cancer, I think I just assumed that this was going to be a walk in the park. And you
also, like you said before, you didn't have any history of it in your family, it's not like you'd watched your mom or your aunts or a sister or anybody have any sort of like positive or negative journey with it. And I will also say, I think that was absolutely your survival instincts kicking in. And that was your way of being like, no, I'm beating this. Like, I'm not going to sit at home and go have chemo and go have surgery and then just be a depressed, crying mess. I've got these 3 small kids. Like, it just wasn't even an option. And again, if that is what you did, I have no idea what I would have done or would do. So it's not like I'm saying that's a bad way to handle it. There's no bad way. But you just are who you are. Like you were like, it just wasn't even able to be a consideration for you.
Yeah, there were moments like I remember it didn't hit me for a couple of days that this was not something to mess around with. And there definitely were panic attacks. Again, the anxiety. I tried to stay upbeat, you know. I very much believe the mind has incredible powers. So I just kept telling myself, I'm going to live to be 102. I'm going to live to be 102. This is never coming back. Like just it became a mantra, you know, in my mind that there's no way I'm not leaving before my kids can't remember me. And, you know, I gauged it by like my memories of my dad, you know, and I would think back, okay, I kind of remember my dad when I was 6, but not a lot, you know, and Mateo's 1. I'm not letting, and I'm sure people would do me justice of, you know, telling him what I was all about, but I'm not letting somebody else tell him what I was all about. He's going to have to witness the circus with me there. But I did have lots of moments where I came crashing down. I didn't, and some of those journeys, some of those moments on the journey were Facebook. So I named my tumor Felicia and had to go. So we were telling Felicia bye. So
bye, Felicia. I remember that.
Bye, Felicia.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I made this group and it was going to be me documenting my journey. I tried to stay as upbeat as I could. I would report back after pretty much any doctor's appointment, or I wanted people to learn along the way, like what it was really like. You know, just the crazy things like getting a port. So 2 weeks after I was diagnosed, I was getting my port placed, which your port is something that saves your veins pretty much for chemo. It's a device that, you know, kind of goes right under your clavicle and it basically pumps the chemo through your heart. So that it's hitting, the way my doctor explained it to me, cancer is a weed and chemo is the weed killer, and it's systematically just killing it. So I didn't know what a port was. I didn't know that after chemo, my children really shouldn't use the restroom after me because those chemo medications coming out, you know, I remember my first infusion, before my first infusion, they did a chemo course at Missouri Baptist. They were wonderful there. Can't speak highly enough about them and the infusion nurses. Everybody, my nurse coordinator, Keely, oh my gosh, she was my ride or die, that woman. I blew her up just about every day. And Lori Adams worked at Missouri Baptist at the time. Right. She was on with another doctor. So she wasn't my nurse coordinator, but there were times she saw me in the waiting room waiting to go in, and she would sit with me and talk with me because she knew that I was struggling. But yeah, all these things I was learning, I wanted to share it with the world because I thought if anything, going to help somebody else that has gone through it or is going through it, or unfortunately maybe will go through it, and for the caregivers of people that, you know, are taking care of somebody that's going through not just breast cancer, but any cancer, letting them know, like, this is what I'm thinking and feeling, and this is probably very similar to what your person's thinking or feeling. You know, that I don't think a lot of people that are going through cancer talk about the fear, the constant fear, the feeling like you were robbed of the trust that you had in your body. I thought I was healthy. I mean, don't get me wrong. There were days where I was standing over the sink eating the rest of my kids' chicken nuggets off their plate. But for the most part, I felt really good at the time I was diagnosed. I was losing weight and felt healthy and was active. And that was another thing. Like, how can I have cancer? I'm not sick. I don't feel sick. And
Well, yeah, you had even like suck out therapy and you were dealing with your postnatal anxiety. You were doing all the things. Yeah.
yeah, so it robs you of the naive bliss that you have before you hear the words you have cancer. You know, you can never go back. And I had a grieving process of I'll never get to be that Michelle again. Like and it was hard to not sulk and be sad. I just wanted to be like all the other moms at pickup or, at the class party, or it was a real identity crisis. And that was what I probably struggled with the most was I was really sad that I wasn't going to be the same Michelle that didn't know all this. So that was a really hard point in that whole journey of I just want to go back to her. Like I had convinced myself, oh, I think they got my file wrong. And I think there was a story on like people.com or something that was shared on Facebook. And it said, woman receives breast cancer diagnosis, goes through treatment, and then finds out she never had breast cancer all along. And I thought, I really hope that happens to me. As crazy as that sounds, I won't even be mad if they tell me, hey, you know what? We messed up your file. I'll be like, fantastic. Let's have a great day together. Let's move on from this.
I was right all along. Y'all had the wrong file. Yeah.
Right. So it was, yeah, it was definitely, it was an identity crisis for sure. And just wanting to be the Michelle before it. And I'm now, I think, have successfully navigated that. I do gauge my life by pre-cancer Michelle and post-cancer Michelle. Like when I think of things, I'm like, oh, that was before I had cancer, which is really weird. But yeah, it was.
I mean, that makes sense though. I mean, it's just like a huge, huge shifts and changes in people's lives. It's like death, divorce, illness. Like we all gauge our lives based off of like, oh, this is when before this or after this. Like, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit, let's go back to these online communities. You did make a decision to sort of remove yourself for those. Can you talk about maybe a little bit about the darker side of that and why maybe? Because I think that if anyone is maybe like going through this or feels like, I mean, there's a tipping point with social media always, right? But the stakes are clearly much higher in this case. But like, sort of what happened or what series of events made you go, okay, I've kind of taken what I need from this. I need to pull back.
Yeah. So unfortunately, it was getting to the point where, you get a white car and then you see everybody has a white car. It was just constantly posting like, let's pray for our pink sister that's passed. And then, somebody that would be in the group that just was, tell me what I can do. What did you do in this case? Should I be eating apricot seeds? And should I, and seeking out any sort of last ditch effort to rid their body of it. And you could feel the despair. And you start getting to know these women, especially the women that post often. And, you see them talk about their children and things like that. And then you see a post that says, oh, I just got word from her husband that she ended up passing. And yeah, so that was becoming something that I felt like I was seeing more and more of. So a lot of those groups I had to leave. There were 2 groups I stayed in. And like I said, I met some wonderful women, and there's been a couple that have passed. And, my heart hurt so much because there was one woman in particular, her and I became very close. We had the same type of cancer. We had the same staging, which I was stage 2. She was stage 2. She had a husband and a daughter and lived in Rockford, Illinois. And we would just write each other with our fears and our hopes. And we would tell each other, you know what, we're going to be really old, crabby ladies with fake boobs. And we're going to look back and say, wow, we got through this. And she ended up getting a recurrence. It came back to her liver. And with triple negative, it's a beast. It's a really, really bad beast. The silver lining about triple negative is when you go through it, if you get to 5 years and you haven't had a recurrence, your chance of it coming back drops down to that of a normal person. Wow. So because it's so fast growing and loves to metastasize pretty quickly, if you don't have a recurrence within 5 years, that's very telling. I want to say she was at maybe 3 or 4 years. So, you're just getting to that point where like, okay, we're getting here. We're gonna be at 5 years in no time. And then she's posting that it's back. It's in her liver. She held on to hope. She was determined to beat it. But unfortunately, when it comes back a good amount of the time, within a year to 18 months, you're no longer here. And I think she was right about at a year. And she then was no longer here. And I think about her daughter all the time and just, how unfortunate that she and her daughter was only in first grade. So I think about her a lot. I didn't know her husband. I never really spoke to him. So I felt weird reaching out to him. Her page is still on Facebook, and every now and then somebody will tag something, and it brings me joy to see, that her daughter looks seemingly happy, but what a travesty that she'll never get to know this incredible woman. Like, she was robbed, and it's very, very, very sad. But, I'm very fortunate that our paths crossed. I just hate why they crossed.
Yeah.
And then I have women that I've met in these groups I have one that lives in Australia, which, she was one that I hold near and dear. I have another dear friend that I love that's in Georgia, and she knows Mateo loves Bigfoot, and, Georgia has lots of Bigfoot sightings. So she's, sent him things about Bigfoot. She made all of my children these lovely quilts and myself one. And I've never even met this woman.
Yeah.
But that's just how amazing and wonderful and kind people are, especially when you're going through the same thing and you just kind of hold on to them like they're a flotation device and you're, just, yeah. So, but yeah, the groups that I first entered, I tell people anytime they're diagnosed now, I'm like, you know what? Don't go in them. You don't need them. You got this. Trust your instincts and, just gain the knowledge you can. But I kind of regret I gained the knowledge I did in the way that I did with those groups, because my heart breaks that this is still happening in this day and age. How we haven't found a cure, I don't know. Maybe I won't even go.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's sort of the elephant in the room. And yeah. But let's pivot and let's talk about, because you were really open on Facebook and you talked about the good days, the bad days, every time you had an appointment. And another thing that I thought was really creative and beautiful, because you had these young children, is sort of the creative vocabulary or language that you developed around like bringing them in and letting them know what was going on with you, like at their level, and in a way that wasn't like, I mean, I'm sure it's hard and sad when your mom is sick, but can you tell us a little bit, because you were talking about your port earlier, so you came up with all these different things that you told them.
Yeah. So I told Petey initially, Lillian and Mateo were really small. And Petey was the one I was most concerned about because he himself has anxiety. I see a lot of myself in Petey. So when I talked to Petey about it, I told him that I had some bugs in my body and I was going to take some medicine that was going to make my hair go away. And its main job was to go in there and kill the bugs. And this isn't medicine that he would ever take, hopefully, this is something special to the kind of bugs that mom has. And, him and I started the mantra of mom's going to live to be 102 and he's going to live to be 102 also. We made a chemo countdown. So I love a good arts and crafts project. I made some pink ribbons and I strung them through a piece of string. And each time I would finish an infusion, we would rip a ribbon off. So it helped them to be part of it and oddly enough, celebrate it. My port was my button, my on button for chemo. So when I went to the doctor, they would turn on my button. Trying to think what else. Yeah, I was just really open with them and tried to explain it from a standpoint of where I thought they would truly get it. Crazy thing about kids is they're resilient and, they just looked at me like I was mom. It was shell shocking for Mateo and Lily because I would leave on Wednesdays for infusions and infusions take several hours. So they were used to me never leaving them. I was stay-at-home mom. They were with me all the time. I rarely went out. So it was a change for them to have somebody come to the house. And Mateo, especially, a 1-year-old with their mom leaving, it was heartbreaking to go out the door and him be screaming at the storm door. And but then I'd come back and he'd climb right up into me. And I remember the first few infusions, my mom was like, "No, come on, Mateo, let's go." And I'm like, "Absolutely not. You leave this baby right here. He's right next to me." And we would have picnics in my room on the days that I didn't feel good because Fabrizio traveled a lot. So the days that I was not feeling great, I would have them get in bed with me. And we thank God Disney Plus. Disney Plus came out the day after my mastectomy. And that that saved my life for recovery. We sat there.
Blessings and timing right there.
Yeah. So we did lots of picnics where we would just lay in my bed and I don't like my children to eat in their rooms. And I was very anal retentive about my house, but that went away real quick. So who cares if we've got crumbs in the bed? We got a wash machine. We can throw it in there when we're done with our picnic. So we spent a lot of time doing that. Me and Lily and Mateo, I would drop Petey off at school and we would drive to Dunkin' or Starbucks and I would get a coffee. I'd get them a donut. We live in South County. We'd drive 141 down to Lone Elk. We'd take the long way. Go through Lone Elk. We discovered our community because we would take rides because they were contained in their car seats. I would turn on music and everybody was happy and I didn't have to mom too hard, as terrible as that sounds.
Well, I just keep thinking about we hear it all the time, but this is just this is how it was really folding out for you in real time is our kids just want our time. Our kids just want he's gonna have these core memories from bed picnics. And usually when you're laying around with your kid watching TV, when you're healthy and you are able-bodied and you could get out of bed and go take them here or take them there or buy them things or do a Build-A-Bear or whatever, you're laying there in bed scrolling your phone and they're watching Disney Plus and you're thinking, I should be this or I should be that. And then later on, they're like, I just remember how you would make Kraft mac and cheese and we would get to eat it in your room. And it's the best memory for them,
And that did. So I had 15 infusions instead of 16. One of them I got my numbers got really low. They tanked. And they're like, we cannot give you your infusion today. And you feel like a failure. You're like, oh, no, I need this. If I don't get this, what happens? And some women, if they have to miss an infusion, they'll tack it on at the end. My tumor was pretty much you could no longer feel it. My oncologist could no longer feel it within like a month of treatment starting. So we knew that it was working. We were hopeful. I started my first infusion 2 weeks after I was diagnosed, and I ended my last infusion on my 36th birthday. So the day that I rang the bell was my rebirth. It was amazing. The nurses there brought in a cookie cake and balloons and celebrated not only me ringing the bell, but me turning 36. So that was my goal, and they knew it because I kept saying, "Oh, I'm going to ring the bell on my birthday." And I was really scared. And I remember when you go in for an infusion, they do labs before to make sure that you're healthy enough to get your infusion. And I think it was either the infusion before there or the infusion before, 2 infusions before, because the first infusions I went every 2 weeks, and that was with the Red Devil. That's what they call that chemo drug. It's really, really potent and has some really awesome side effects, let me tell you. So you only get 4 of those per lifetime because that drug is so toxic that that's the lifetime max is 4 infusions. And those were every 2 weeks. And then I started going weekly. So I remember coming in for that last infusion, and we were waiting for the labs. And the nurse started to walk over, and her face looked like we weren't going to be able to do it. And I'm like, oh no. And she walks over and hands me my lab report. And she's like, let's get this started. She's trying to trick me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that dark humor, they knew you by then.
They knew me. And, I was one of the younger women patients that was coming into the infusion center. So a lot of the nurses were my age. And, you always knew when Michelle was there because, I'm loud. I have the gift of gab. And they would sit and talk with me. And they really became like friends. Speaking of friends, I would watch it every infusion. That's, one of my memories.
I'm recording in here. I didn't know you were going to be home this soon. Can you give me like another 20, 30 minutes? Sorry.
We had enough.
Whoops.
Oh, life of a mom. But yeah. So October 9th, last infusion. Then I had to get my strength up to endure the surgery. So I had my surgery on November 13th of 2019. Had a double mastectomy, went straight to implant because when I was first diagnosed, they didn't suspect that it was in my lymph nodes. So when I had my surgery, they that magnet that they placed in the tumor, that's all that was left. But they noticed some fibrosis, some scarring in one of my lymph nodes, my sentinel lymph node, which suggested that the cancer did try to go to my lymph nodes, but the chemo stopped it. So I ended up having the, best outcome possible. It was a pathological complete response, a PCR, which I would talk about those all the time on my Facebook page and how I was going to have one and pray that I was going to have one. And that's what I needed to have. So I had it. I, spoke it into the universe and it happened. So very, very exciting. I thought, okay, we're done. We heal now. And then I got a call from the radiation oncologist nurse saying, we want to set you up for your consultation. And I said, no, honey, you don't understand. I had a PCR. I don't have to have that. And she said, well, I think you need to talk to your doctor. And so I talked to the radiation oncologist and my oncologist. And they said, because I was so young and because it was such an aggressive form of cancer, that they were really recommending that I do 28 radiation sessions. So I would go every day for 28 days, except on weekends and holidays, and lay on a table for about 10 minutes. And they radiated my armpit and my breast area and my clavicle, just to ensure that we were throwing everything at it out the gate. And that was my mindset. I have to do everything they're offering to me right now, because if this thing comes back and I didn't do something, I'm going to be so mad at myself.
So you said earlier, usually you don't do radiation unless it travels to the lymph nodes, but they didn't have indication that it had traveled to the lymph nodes. But because of your age, they just wanted to hit it with like everything but the kitchen. Yeah. Like they just wanted to throw everything at it.
When I was diagnosed afterwards they did a breast MRI, and the MRI showed that it did not look like it was in my lymph nodes. And I started chemo quickly within 2 weeks of being diagnosed. And either it just grew that quickly, or it was maybe so microscopic that the scan didn't pick it up, which is really scary to think about. Um, but and they couldn't confirm when they went in and did pathology on the lymph nodes that they dissected at my surgery that it was in fact cancer. But they've seen it so many times, the fibrosis. They couldn't tell me for sure, yes, this is cancer. We have to radiate. But there was a high likelihood. That's why I had that fibrosis. So, and actually my breast surgeon, Dr. Margaret Taylor, she's incredible. Well-respected breast surgeon in the St. Louis area out of Barnes, just compassionate and incredible and precise. And I can't speak highly enough about my whole medical team.
You don't always get that compassion side with the analytical and like scientific mind of a surgeon. That's a beautiful combination when they can have that. Yeah.
My first appointment with her, and I mean, she wasn't my original breast surgeon. My original breast surgeon was wonderful. It was a gentleman at Missouri Baptist. At the time, there was only one plastic surgeon that had rights to operate at Missouri Baptist alongside him. And I was really hell-bent on, I want to go straight to implant. I don't want to go flat. I could not. And lots of women do, and they're comfortable in their skin with that. Me, at 35 years old, I was not comfortable with that. And my husband, we'd been together, Fabrizio and I met the summer before sophomore year of high school. We grew up together, and it wasn't more so for him, but still, like my womanhood, in a sense, I comfortably could not go flat, even if it was only for a temporary amount of time. And some women have to, whether they want to or not, and it breaks my heart for them. But I wanted to go straight to implant. And the only plastic surgeon at the time that could operate with my original breast surgeon, he had done implants for breast cancer survivivors, but his specialty was cleft palates for pediatrics. And I'm like, what? And I had a couple, I had a couple of women reach out to me and tell me some not so great stories. And my gut was telling me, like, I had a consultation set up with him, and they canceled on me twice. And when they called me back the third time, I said, you know what? I think that I am going to figure something else out. So I went to one of those mom groups on Facebook, not mom groups, I'm sorry, breast cancer groups. There's one that I'm still a part of. It's Young Women in St. Louis Breast Cancer Group. And I explained the situation, and immediately Dr. Julie Morgan Taylor, get in with her. So I call, and she's very well known, well respected. She's fantastic. I call and I explain to the nurse, and I'm kind of in tears because I'm like, what am I going to do? I don't want to go flat, and I have to have a surgeon that, can have a plastic surgeon do implants. And they said, well, she's booked, but she did just have a cancellation for next week that called today.
Bam.
And it was just a God wink moment. Like, what? And she's like, I'm putting you in. And I met with her. And the first thing she said to me, I always wear this necklace with my kids' names on it. She walks in and she says, asks me how I'm doing, looks over, sees my necklace and goes, are those your children's names? And I said, they are. And she said, they're beautiful. And she sat there and talked to me about my kids for a little bit before we got into the nitty gritty of it, and wanted to know their ages and what they were into. And she was just so warm. And again, that reassurance is a liability. So she couldn't say, you're going to be fine. I'm going to cure you. It's going to be good. But there was a warmth and compassion about her. I left there feeling so secure that she was going to take care of me. And seen, yes.
We
And
all want to be seen. Like,
yes, yeah. And she was incredible. And I got hooked up. She recommended me to a plastic surgeon that actually didn't do cleft palates, worked on, doing breast augmentations for breast cancer survivors. She does other things too, but she was incredible. And, I just right place, right time kind of thing. And
mm,
I loved my previous breast surgeon, but I got very lucky to get in with her, and she was just wonderful. And when the pathology came back, she said, "Michelle, we got the best outcome." She's like, "You have a 5% or less chance of this coming back. I don't think you need the radiation." And then I had my oncologist and radiation oncologist saying, "No, it looks more like an 18 to 20% chance of it coming back. We really think that you should do this." And I hemmed and hawed, and it was a hard decision because radiation is not fun. And I really, really, as sick as this sounds, I really respected Dr. Taylor, and I was really nervous that she was almost going to be upset with me for not taking her recommendation because
mm,
she was just so incredible. And I thought she was so smart and wise, and, she had my best interest. And I told her, I'm like, I really, really appreciate your recommendation and respect you so highly. But I feel like if I don't do this, and God forbid this comes back, I will forever beat myself up. And
right.
she's like, you got to do what your heart tells you to do. She didn't yell at me. She didn't tell me I was the worst, all those things you think in your head. So, yeah. So my last radiation session was on July, January 31st of 2020. A month and a half later, COVID hits. And while the world was shutting down and it sucked, and, ever it was terrible, a terrible moment in time, I was really grateful that I got back that undivided attention with my
Mhm.
children that I missed out on Wednesdays.
Yeah.
So silver linings, COVID was awful, and I am heartbroken for so many friends who have lost loved ones to it. And I really wish that wasn't the way that I got that time with them, but I was really thankful for that bit of time to reconnect with them.
Well, there's couple more things. I know I'm keeping you a long time, so I
Oh, no.
appreciate you gathering with me. There's just a couple other things that I really do want to touch on. And I think that, we discussed how, just from the perspective of like connection and our people, and you had your online community and you had your family, your mom was helping with the kids, you had um the narrative and the vocabulary that you created and the crafts that you did, with PD to help with that. I want to talk a little more about you and Fabrizio,
Okay.
and sort of, I think again, I haven't been around y'all a ton, but you hit the nail on the freaking head when you were talking about when you went to him before y'all were even married, and you were like, I think I want to, give my Uncle Doug my kidney. And he was like, well, I don't know. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
I'm just on the Michelle train. Like, and that is like 1000% the vibe and the energy that y'all give. And I just want to take a second to say, I had a note to say this earlier and I forgot, but y'all are like my favorite people to be at a wedding with.
Oh my gosh.
Because, and I feel like so a part of like our crazy, friend network now, but like back in the day when everybody was like getting married and I was sort of new on the scene, like I'd be like, okay, Daniel, well, is Michelle going to be there? Are Michelle and Fabrizio going to be there? And I'd be like, okay, I'll be fine. Like me and Michelle will just steal a little corner. We'll crack each other up. Her and Fabrizio will crack me up. Like y'all were always like my go-tos at weddings. So anyway, maybe some more people will be getting married soon. We can hang out at weddings again. But I want to know a little bit about like what may have shifted or didn't shift, or the things that like sort of how did that impact y'all's connection, your intimacy, your marriage?
Yeah. So, Fabrizio is he's so calm and I'm so not. So yin and yang, he's very easygoing. He doesn't, I don't know. He's that one when everything was falling, I really was so thankful that he was able to keep it together and be like, we got this. It'll be fine. Like we're gonna get through it. And again, dark humor, like him and I been together a long time. I'll never forget the year before for Halloween, we dressed up as the Addams family. So he was Gomez, I was Morticia, the kids were Pugsley and all of that. And it's probably terrible to say. And I don't think I'll get mad because it's just who Fabrizio is. But one night we're standing in the kitchen. I'm bald as can be, and we're chit-chatting, and we always kind of razz each other. And he's like, what are you thinking for Halloween this year? And I was like, I don't know. And he's like, well, if we do Addams Family, you got to be Uncle Fester this year. And I'm like, you son of a gun. He tried to make me laugh or make light of anything and kept me super grounded when I was spiraling, which was a lot at times. He did travel a lot while I was sick. And sometimes I would wonder, was that a way of him coping? Because it was probably weird for him to see me not constantly on the go, because he's been notorious for, he'll come home and relax and I'm bebopping around the house wanting to do all the things. And he'll say, just relax, just sit down, it's fine. You don't have to do all that right now. So I think he just, he's always the calm to my crazy. So he was just always, we got this, we'll figure it out. And that's just his style to this day. When I come to him as Chicken Little and I'm like, the sky is falling, he's like, no, it's not. We'll figure it out. Everything always works out. So it was really nice to have that.
Yeah, Fabrizio's like, I'm handy. He's like, I'm handy, Michelle. I'll build us a new sky.
Yeah. He's like, we'll figure it out. And, he traveled a lot while I was sick. It wasn't like he was requesting it, but I think on one hand, while he hated to be away, I think it was also really hard for him to see me in a different way than he ever had. I am just that person who bebops around all day doing all the things. Like I can't sit still. It's my anxiety and ADHD. Like if there's a sink full of dishes, I'm not relaxing until that sink full of dishes is gone. And he would constantly be like, settle down, sit down. It'll be there. It's fine. In the days that I was sick, I was not bebopping around. And while he had always told me not to worry about it and to just relax and to chill, he knew that this was something that it wasn't something that I wanted to stop for on my own. Like I was being forced to stop. And I think it was hard for him to see me like that and see me in that light. And, he hated being away, but I think he struggled with that. And the thing is, like, he didn't ever want to take away from me. Like, don't worry about me. You're the one going through the bigger thing. Like, I'm fine. It's fine. We'll be fine. So, we've never really talked about how he struggled through it. We just kind of got through it and we're where we are. But I know that couldn't have been easy on him to watch me that way, to see me that way. But he kept the humor through it all and the calm. And there were moments, I'm bald. It took a little bit before I had a wig. Mobap has this wonderful program. I would think they still have it where they ordered me a wig for free. I didn't really like wearing it unless I was like at a wedding or somewhere I couldn't wear a baseball cap. My go-to was a baseball cap. And as weird as it sounds, I was nervous the first time I let Fabrizio see me without a hat on. And I knew he wasn't going to be like, ugh, I'm going, leave, bye. but just I was not comfortable in my own skin. So I knew that he wouldn't, there's no way he could look at me and be like, oh, this is the person I want to be with, bald and all.
Yeah. Well,
So
that's not weird. I mean, again, it's like that lack of choice in the matter.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, when that
And he,
control is taken away, it's like it's vulnerability. It's you feel so vulnerable. Yeah.
yeah. And he was great about it. And him making jokes about it, honestly, like it made me feel better. Like he knew it was
Well, that
temporary.
was like you and Fabri, like you said earlier, like I'm never gonna be the Michelle that I was, the Michelle that didn't have breast cancer. Like you had to like mourn that. But like
Yeah.
Fabrizio just being the Fabrizio that he had always been, I'm sure that constant was
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's
Yeah.
beautiful.
No, it was, it was definitely awkward at times for sure. But we got through it together. Like we just, and not that we made little of it because it was really scary, but the moments we were together or were talking, unless it was me spiraling and what if this doesn't go the right way? And what if this? And, I remember making a video like right after I was diagnosed and knew what the treatment plan was going to be. I made a video to the kids of all the things that I at that moment could possibly want to save in case things went south. And I've never watched that video, but I made Fabrizio aware of the video. And he's like, we're not talking about that. Like that video's never going to get played. Just
Mhm.
no. Like the things that we talked about when I was going through it were like little blips. We were still living our lives. We were
Mhm.
still busy parents of three small children. We still had our normal stressors of, you know, money and all the things. So even though cancer was forefront in our household, we were feeling very loved and supported by our community and our family and our friends. And we had this sense of like, we don't need to dwell on it because everybody's helping us. Like, we're going to be okay even in the moments that I felt like we weren't going to be okay. And we just lived our lives with this additional layer of cancer. And, it was a long time. Even after I finished treatment, um, it's really scary going into survivorship because you're not actively fighting. Like you don't have an active poison running through your body, killing the cancer cells. You're just free falling. So, we weren't necessarily prepared for that. And we navigated it. And there were, times that I would come to him like, oh my gosh, my stomach's been hurting for this long. I'm worried. He'd be like, call a doctor. It's fine. We'll figure it out. Like he was constantly calm and trying to keep things as normal as possible. And when I think things didn't feel as normal as possible, he did a really great job of not pushing it aside, but like distracting me as best he could. Not that he didn't want me, it wasn't important or things like that, but he wanted to ground me and bring me back to, okay, this is going on. We're going to be okay. But we got this going on. Mateo just ripped off his diaper and is running through the house. Maybe we should get that.
Mhm.
Like, he was just he was my calming force through it all for sure. So
Just the way that he always has been. Yeah.
yeah.
Like that
And
constant. Yeah.
and comic relief when needed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah. So he let me win a lot of fights during that time, probably because he felt sorry for me. But he'll probably never admit that, but I know that's why.
Yeah,
So
that's the thing that changed. The fighting was probably a little different, right?
yeah, for sure. It definitely, things definitely take a back burner when that's going on. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay, well now that you are, I guess, for a better term, the other side of things, I don't know if you really feel completely out of the wood. What does you so how many years cancer free are you?
So it depends on who you ask. The American Cancer Society says, oh, I think we froze again.
Yeah, I
Can you
got you
hear?
though. Do you have me?
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yes. Sorry. Um, So the Cancer Society, I'm getting that
American Cancer
backwards.
Society.
Thank
Yeah.
you. So yeah, that goes off of when you were diagnosed is when your survivorship starts. So that would be 7 years on this coming May 15th, which
Okay.
very thankful for that.
Right around the corner. Yeah.
My oncologist said the last chemo infusion, so that would be my birthday. So that would be 7 years in October then. So I'm past that 5 years mark, which
Right.
is wonderful. Life is so much better on the other side. Still have some things that I live with. I was thrown into menopause during chemo, so that sucked. And then my body came out of it, and now my body's trying to go back into it. So I'm very lucky to go through menopause twice in my life.
How
Um,
fun. What
I
a
know.
beautiful side effect.
It's amazing. Don't recommend it. Yeah. So, and then chemo brain is a real deal thing. Like brain fog from perimenopause wasn't enough. I feel extra stupid most days. But people still love me apparently.
We do, Michelle.
Yeah, yeah. So, but no, nothing feels better than being on the other side of it. And, it was a real struggle when it ended because I'm like, oh, this impending doom feeling many days. And my nurse coordinator, Keely, God love her, there was a time where like almost, I don't know, every couple of months, I'm like, Keely, are my eyes yellow? Keely, I had a headache. She's like, oh,
Mm.
call me if it's been 2 weeks. She was very much like, if she knew if something was really bothering me, okay, we'll do a scan. We'll figure it out. We'll do a scan. I'll get you in. And very proactive. But she also knew when I was spiraling unnecessarily, um, which was great. She also, anytime that I would have a scan, my medical team, so my oncologist that got me through treatment retired afterwards. He retired in March. So he got me through all of treatment and then he took his well-deserved retirement. So my new oncologist is a woman who's absolutely phenomenal. When I go see her for my follow-ups, we spend the whole time talking about our kids because we have kids that are very similar in age. But they both, anytime anything has popped up and I've had to do an investigative scan, they get my results back to me. There was one night we were checking on my liver and I had a scan done. And I remember Dr. Rooney called me at like 7 o'clock at night to say, hey, I just want to let you know it's all clear. Like she knew that you almost feel like you're on pause when you're waiting for a scan result. Like you can't live your life and you just are sitting there holding your breath thinking, whatever the results of this scan could potentially change my life all over again. So she is really great and knock on wood, I haven't had to have a scan in a long time. But they were always very cognizant of the fact that they know Michelle and they know Michelle is spiraling and she cannot think of anything else until she hears that it's the all clear, hopefully. So, yeah, there's just the further away I get, the happier I am. But I'm forever going to have that feeling of what if. And it's a lot more silent than it was initially after treatment, but it's still always going to be there anytime something lingers for a while. And it's funny, the things you think about, like any little thing to where you're like, okay, am I, are my eyes looking more yellow? Or that backache that I have, did I maybe getting older? Did I maybe just twist weird and I'm suffering a little bit of a muscle cramp? Or you're just always second guessing what is going on in your body. So,
well, yeah, that trust, you have to rebuild that trust that was broken. Yeah.
And I don't know that I'll ever fully trust my body again. And it's crazy because it's not just me. Like there are times where I look at Fabrizio and I'm like, okay, like I start scanning him or the kids, any little thing. It's just, and that's it's probably not healthy and I should probably get back to talking to my therapist about it.
Girl, shouldn't we all? We all have something
You
we should be
know,
talking to our therapist about.
but yeah, it's not just my trust in my own body, it's the people I love too. And,
Mhm.
because I know what I've been through and watching out for certain symptoms, I can't help but like pay uber extra attention to things whenever like Fabrizio's like, oh, my back has really been bothering me. I'm like, how long? Is it waking you up at night? Like all the
Mhm.
things that I'm supposed to look for, I'm now gauging everybody. So, and I unfortunately have cancer to thank for that. So, yeah.
Well, all I have to say is you made it past 38.
Hmm.
You made it past 5 years. I mean, it sounds to me like you're living to 102, Michelle. You're 102. You and Petey manifested it.
Oh, yeah, we did. Yep.
That's the only story I'm telling myself.
Yep. Uh,
Well, thank you so, so much for just sharing like so openly. A lot of this I sort of knew or kind of knew or I remembered as you were telling it because I definitely was, right there following along on Facebook. And
yeah.
I'm just so grateful to you for how open you were then, how open you continue to be. Um, just for my own personal comfort, because, as everybody heard, it's just, I mean, and maybe my fear isn't this like larger than life. Like maybe most women my age are sort of living in that same sort of like, because, I hear you say like, you get those scans and you're just frozen in time. But I'm like, well, yeah, and your stakes are so much higher. And that's sort of how I feel with every stupid mammogram. Like, it feels like I'm kind of frozen until I get
Yeah.
that, like, so I can't even fathom,
Everything just goes on pause.
yeah,
And
coming out on the other side as a survivor and how those things must feel. You're such a generous, open, loving, kind, also wickedly funny, gorgeous human in my life. So I appreciate you so much. I appreciate your time today. And I know that a lot of women on here will appreciate, everything you shared today as well.
well, thank you for having me. I am always happy to share and probably share too much sometimes, but
No, no such thing. There's no such thing, especially on Kim and Friends. Like too much information is not a thing. We want all the information here.
I love
I
it.
love you dearly. I mean, we're all like old. So unless some of our friends that are like getting divorced and are getting remarried, like our odds of seeing each other at a wedding are getting lower and lower. So like we need to just like grab a coffee.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I will text you after this recording and we'll get something scheduled. I just love you, girl. I love you. Thank you so much.
Tell
Thanks,
Daniel I
Michelle.
said hi.
I will. Have a great evening.
You too. Bye, Kim.